Hello everyone, welcome back. Today, we're diving into one of the house wardens in Twisted Wonderland, Riddle Rosehearts. As the first house warden to Overblot, Riddle sets the tone for the entire game's exploration of trauma, control, and breaking free from toxic cycles. On the surface, Riddle seems like a straightforward character, a strict rule enforcer who snaps when people don't follow his absurd regulations. But when you actually examine his psychology and backstory, you realize his overblot is the result of a lifetime of abuse and a desperate, misguided attempt to make sense of that abuse. So, let's break down why Riddle became a tyrant, what actually caused his overblot, and what his story teaches us about control, childhood trauma, and learning to accept that sometimes the people who were supposed to protect us were wrong. To understand Riddle, we have to start with his mother. And let me be clear, Riddle's mother is abusive. Not in a cartoonishly evil way, but in a way that's actually more insidious. She genuinely believed that she's doing what's best for him. From the time Riddle was 3 years old, his mother had him start medical training. By age 10, he had not only developed his unique magic of with your head, but had completely mastered it. His entire childhood was scheduled down to the minute. Study times, meal plans with exact calorie counts, sleep schedules, no sweets, no playing, no friends, no childhood. This wasn't just strict parenting. This was systematic psychological conditioning designed to create her vision of the perfect mate. And, for the most part, it worked. Riddle became exactly what she wanted. Brilliant, disciplined, powerful, he excelled academically, mastered magic at a young age, became house warden in his first week of NRC. By every objective measure, he was successful, but he was miserable, and he didn't even fully realize it. The turning point, the moment that will define Riddle's entire worldview, happened when he was still a child. One day, Trey and Chenya knocked in his window. They invited him to sneak out and play, and for the first time in his life, Riddle said yes to something his mother hadn't pre-approved. They went to Trey's family bakery. Riddle finally got to see that jewel-like strawberry tarts he'd only glimpsed in bakery windows. He finally got to taste one. He finally got to socialize with other children, to make friends, to just be a kid. And Riddle was happy, genuinely, simply happy in a way he's never experienced before. But he stayed out too late one day, and his mother found out. The punishment wasn't just a scolding. Riddle was locked in his room. He was forbidden from ever seeing Trey or Chenya again. From that day forward, his mother swore to tighten her grip even further, stripping away even more of his freedom. Now, here's where we need to talk about psychology, because this single event shaped everything about who Riddle became. There's a concept in psychology called locus of control. It refers to the extent to which you believe you have control over events that impact your life. People with an internal locus of control believe outcomes are determined by their own actions. People with external locus of control believe outcomes are determined by outside forces, like luck or fate. Generally, having an internal locus of control is considered healthy. It means you take responsibility for your actions and believe you can influence your future. However, Riddle developed a twisted version of internal locus of control. When he was punished for eating that tart, his child's mind had to make sense of what happened, and he had two options. One, my mother is wrong, her rules are too strict and her punishment is unfair. Or 2. I was wrong. If I had just followed the rules, I wouldn't have been punished. Now, here's the thing. As a child, Riddle has no power to escape his situation. He couldn't leave, he couldn't fight back, he was completely dependent on his mother. So, believing that she was the problem would mean accepting that he was trapped in an inescapable situation with no control over his own suffering. That's a terrifying realization for a child. It was psychologically safer for him to blame himself, because if the problem was his disobedience, then he had control. He could prevent future suffering by being perfect, by following every rule, by never stepping out of line again. This is a common response to abuse, especially in children. They blame themselves because believing they have some control, even if it means accepting the blame, is less terrifying than accepting that they're powerless. So, Riddle internalized a brutal lesson. The rules are absolute. Breaking them leads to pain. Following them keeps me safe. The rules become his armor, his identity, his entire framework for understanding the world. But there's another layer to this. Riddle didn't just follow the rules out of fear. He convinced himself that his mother was right, that her methods were good, that he was being raised properly. Why? Because accepting the alternative was too painful. If he admitted his mother was abusive, he'd have to confront that his entire childhood was stolen from him, that the person who was supposed to love him unconditionally was actually hurting him, that all his suffering was for nothing. So he built a fantasy. In this fantasy, his mother loved him and wanted what was best for him. The rules were good and necessary. He was being prepared for success. Everything made sense and had purpose. We actually see this coping mechanism come back in Book 7. During the dream sequence, Riddle is living in an idealized version of his life where his mother is kind and approving, and when he starts to realize it's not real, he hesitates to wake up. Later, when he dreams of Huxleyable students actually respecting him, Leona tries to tell him it's all a dream and he needed to wake up. But Riddle refuses, because what's so bad about living in a dream? At least here, he's loved. Even though he knows intellectually that the dream is fake, it gives him something he desperately craves. A world where he is loved and respected by everyone. Riddle would rather live in a comforting lie than face a painful truth. And that's exactly what he did his entire childhood. He chose to believe in his mother's fantasy rather than accept the reality of his situation. So, Riddle finally escapes his mother's house and goes to Night Raven College. For the first time in his life, he's free from her direct control. And what does he do with that freedom? He immediately recreates the exact same prison he just escaped. But why? If he hated being controlled, why would he become the controller? There were a few reasons. First, it's all he knows. Riddle has never experienced normal social interaction. He doesn't know how to make friends, how to relax, how to just be a person outside of this role of perfect student. The only model he has for how to interact with others is his mother's authoritarian approach. Second, he genuinely believes he's helping. In Riddle's mind, rules equal success. His mother's strict regimen made him powerful and accomplished. He became house warden in his first week at NRC. He maintained top grades. He mastered powerful magic. So, when he enforces the Queen of Hearts rules on his fellow dorm members, he's not trying to be cruel. He thinks he's setting them up for success. He thinks he's saving them from the failure and mediocrity that comes from lack discipline. Every punishment he gives, every rules he enforces, in his mind, these are acts of kindness, tough love, necessary lessons. He has no idea that he'd become exactly what his mother was to him, a tyrant who controls others for their own good. He even uses his mother's logic to justify it. Since he became dorm leader, no one in Heart's label have failed or dropped out. This proves his methods work, right? This proves his mother was correct. Because if his mother wasn't correct, then what was all his suffering for? Third, control gives him a sense of power. For his entire childhood, Riddle had zero control over his own life. Every decision was made for him. Every moment was scheduled. He was essentially a puppet his mother was molding. Now, as house warden, he finally had control. He gets to make the rules. He gets to decide who gets punished and who doesn't. After a lifetime of powerlessness, that must be intoxicating. He's finally the one in control instead of the one being controlled. It's a way of reclaiming power, except he's wielding it in the same toxic way it was wielded against him. Of course, the result of all this is that Riddle became exactly what he doesn't want to be: alone. His dorm members doesn't respect him. They fear him. They follow the rules because they are terrified of his off-with-your-head spell, not because they believe in them. Behind his back, they resent him. Some, like Ace, openly hate him. And Riddle doesn't understand why. He's doing everything right. He's following his mother's teachings. He's being a good house warden by maintaining discipline. He's helping them succeed. Look at those statistics. No one's failing. So why is he so miserable? Why doesn't anyone like him? Why does following all these rules perfectly still leave him feeling empty and isolated? The first crack in his worldview forms here. He's starting to realize that despite doing everything his mother told him would lead to success and respect, it's not working. But he can't fully confront that realization yet. Because if his mother's methods don't work, then what was the point of his entire childhood? There's another issue brewing that Riddle doesn't see. His approach might work in NRC's environment, but it's doomed to fail in the real world. At NRC, Riddle has absolute authority as house warden. He has the powerful magic that lets him physically enforce his will. The environment is hierarchical. Might makes right, and Riddle is mighty. So his dorm members comply. They put up with this tyranny because they only have to survive it for 3 years, and then they'll graduate and be free of him. But what happens after graduation? In the real world, Riddle won't be able to collar people who disagree with him. He won't have absolute authority. He'll need to work with college, negotiate, compromise, listen to others' perspectives. And he's completely unprepared for that. He never learned how to be wrong. He never learned how to take criticism. He never learned that following rules rigidly doesn't always lead to the best outcome. Riddle is, in many ways, being set up for failure despite his intelligence and power. because he lacks the social skills and emotional flexibility that success in the real world requires. And the tragedy is that no one dared to tell him this. Everyone was either too afraid of him or too apathetic to care about his future. They just avoided him and waited for him to be someone else's problem. Until Ace and Deuce come along. So, let's talk about what actually triggered Riddle's Overblot. It's not just one thing, it's a perfect storm of events that all hit at once, shattering the carefully constructed worldview he spent his whole life building. First, there's Ace's confrontation. After Riddle defeats Ace and Deuce in their duel for House Warden position, Ace doesn't just accept defeat. Instead, he gave Riddle one of the most brutal "the reason you suck" speeches in the game. And the key thing about Ace's speech is that he doesn't let Riddle off the hook with the "I had a hard childhood" excuse. Yes, Ace acknowledged that Riddle's mother was controlling and that's not Riddle's fault, but he also points out that Riddle is choosing to perpetuate that cycle. Riddle refuses to listen to others. He refuses to question whether his mother's teaching might be wrong. He doesn't want to be helped because accepting help means admitting he might be wrong, and he can't handle that. Riddle is so focused on protecting the fantasy that his mother was right and his suffering had meaning that he's making everyone around him suffer too. This plants a seed of doubt in Riddle's mind. For the first time, someone is challenging not just his rules, but the fundamental worldview those rules are built on. Then, someone throws an egg at him during the unbirthday party. The fear his dorm members had of him is gone, replaced by open mockery and rebellion. And this devastates Riddle, because in his mind, everything he'd done had been to help them. He's been enforcing rules to set them up for success, just like his mother did for him. He's been strict because he cares about their future. And he's repaid with hatred and humiliation. They throw an egg at him. They openly reject everything he tried to do for them. From his perspective, this is a betrayal. He sacrificed his relationship with them to do what he thought was right, and they don't even appreciate it. But the final blow, the one that truly shatters everything, is Dre. Dre uses his Paint the Roses unique magic to override Riddle's Off With Your Head spell. In that moment, Dre's magic is stronger than Riddle's. And this breaks something fundamental in Riddle's worldview. Because Riddle had followed every rule. He started his magical training at age 3. He sacrificed his entire childhood for perfect discipline and training. He mastered his unique magic by age 10. He'd done everything his mother said would make him powerful and successful. Meanwhile, Trey, who sneaks starts, who breaks rules, who never had Riddle's fanatical devotion to discipline, is stronger than him right now. In this crucial moment, Trey's more lax approach produced better results than Riddle's rigid perfectionism. And that shouldn't be possible. Not according to everything Riddle was taught. Not according to the worldview he built his entire identity around. Riddle's mind is trying to process two contradictory beliefs. 1. My mother's teachings are correct. Following rules perfectly leads to success and power. 2. Dre, who doesn't follow rules as strictly as I do, just overpowered me. These can't both be true. And the realization that's forcing its way into Riddle's consciousness is that his mother was wrong. If Trey can succeed without Riddle's level of sacrifice, then all of Riddle's suffering was unnecessary. Every friend he never had, every cake he never ate, every moment of childhood joy he denied himself, every minute scheduled down to the second, it was all for nothing. This is what psychologists call the sunk cost fallacy. Riddle has invested so much pain, so much time, so much of himself into his mother's path that the idea of it being worthless is unbearable. He spent his entire life trying to make his suffering mean something. He convinced himself that the pain had purpose, that it was building towards something, that he was being forged into something great through his sacrifice. But if his mother was wrong, then his suffering had no meaning. He was just a child being abused, and he wasted his whole childhood on a lie. The cognitive dissonance is too great. Riddle can't hold these contradictory beliefs together anymore. The fantasy he's been living in, that his mother was right, that the rules were good, that his suffering had meaning, is collapsing. And he's forced to confront the truth. His mother abused him. Everything he did was for nothing. He wasted his childhood and received nothing of real value in return. That realization that his entire life has been built on a lie, that he's been defending his abuser, that he'd become that abuser to others, is what finally breaks him. All the pain he suppressed, all the anger he never allowed himself to feel, all the grief for the childhood he lost, all the bitterness of the unfairness of it all, it explodes out of him at once. The little boy who just wanted a piece of cake, who just wanted to play with his friends, who just wanted his mother to love him without conditions. That boy's rage and hurt finally got expressed, transformed into a monstrous Overblot. I was going to be sad no matter what I did, he cries out, and that's the core of it. Whether he followed the rules or broke them, whether he was perfect or imperfect, he was always going to suffer. Because the problem was never him. It was his mother's impossible standards and the abusive control. But admitting that means admitting he never had control at all. That all his efforts to be perfect, to follow every rule, to never make a mistake, none of it could have saved him from the pain. His entire coping mechanism, his entire identity, it all shatters, and the Overblot is the result. The beautiful thing about Riddle's story is what happened after he's saved from his Overblot. For the first time, Riddle is forced to truly confront what happened to him. He can't hide behind rules or perfectionism or the fantasy that his mother was right. He had to face the painful truth. He was abused, and he perpetuated that abuse to others. When he wakes up from his Overblot, Riddle cries. He shows a much softer, more childlike side, the scared little boy who lost out on his childhood. He confesses that all he ever wanted was to eat strawberry tarts and have fun with his friends. And that is the first step towards real healing. Riddle doesn't abandon rules entirely. That's not who he is. And completely abandoning structure wouldn't be healthy either. But he learns that rules should serve people, not control them. That their purpose is to guide and protect, not to punish and restrict. He mellows out significantly when a dormouse goes missing from a teapot, when roses are left white, when MC's tie is crooked. Riddle responds with patience rather than rage. He even fixes MC's ties for them gently. He learns to listen to others. He accepts that he can be wrong. He understands now that his perspective isn't the only valid one, and that sometimes breaking a rule is actually the right thing to do. Most importantly, he learned that mistakes don't make him worthless, that he can fail, can be imperfect, can be vulnerable, and still be valued and loved by his friends. But his growth isn't instant or complete. We still see his anger get the best of him sometimes. He still maintains his respect for rules and a generally professional demeanor. He's still learning, still healing. At the beginning of Book 4, Riddle mentions he'll be returning home for winter break and intends to speak with his mother. This is huge. This shows that Riddle is recognizing that how his mother raised him wasn't unquestionably right, and that he wants to resolve his issues with her diplomatically, rather than just rebel or lash out. We never really get to see that conversation, but the fact that Riddle wants to have it shows growth. He's not just accepting things as they are. He's trying to address the root of his trauma. Book 6 gives us a really interesting insight into how Riddle is still holding on to values instilled by his mother, despite being aware of how toxic her parenting was. When Riddle pairs up with Azul to explore Styx, he insisted on taking the lead because Riddle is used to the position where he leads. He refuses to let Azul get hurt because only licensed medical professionals are allowed to perform healing spells on people that use transformation potion. And since Azul is a merfolk that used the potion to become human, if Azul were to get hurt and Riddle has to heal him, he would be breaking the law, since he doesn't have a medical license. Never mind that they're in a crisis situation where normal rules might not apply. Riddle still sees rules as absolutes. This carries over to his medical technique too. Idia observed that Riddle's spells are extremely powerful, but because he puts all his strength into his magic, he tires easily and lacks physical stamina for prolonged battles. He still doesn't understand his own limits. He only seeks straightforward solutions to immediate problems, whether that's unleashing fire magic to void stick agents or tutoring an upperclassman to ensure they pass. Riddle and Azul clashed almost immediately. When Riddle protected Azul to uphold the law, it made Azul misinterpret the situation. Azul thinks that Riddle protected him because he did not believe that Azul can protect himself. He worked so hard, accomplished so much, and for what? For Riddle to scoff at everything he built? To be treated as lesser, as incompetent, as someone who needs protecting? Azul snaps back, reminding Riddle that titles like dorm leader and top student mean nothing in the real world. He throws Riddle's own words back at him. It's just a fact, when Riddle protests. And Riddle doesn't take this well. He's not used to being challenged. Remember, when Riddle disobeyed his mother, he was severely punished. When his dorm members rebelled in Book 1, he responded with rage. Getting angry is his defense mechanism to protect an ego that cannot fully handle being told he's wrong. Riddle isn't used to the idea of being challenged, to not be obeyed. He wanted Azul to follow his orders. But unlike the students in his dorm, Azul is an equal, someone he can't order around. That was the problem. Riddle knows what to do when dealt with people that needs his guidance. But he's painfully inexperienced when he needs to work together with someone as an equal. What Riddle needed was exactly what he got: to be told off. Just like Ace did in Book 1, Azul became the voice of reason to stop Riddle from acting self-righteous. Riddle had a very sheltered upbringing, His textbook knowledge and academic positions won't necessarily apply to the real world. Being dorm leader or top student doesn't make you street smart or teaches you how to apply skills in real world settings, something Azul actually does have. As a child, Azul was mercilessly bullied for being a chubby, slow swimmer and a crybaby. He used that pain to transform himself through sheer effort and cunning. By middle school, he was using his unique magic to steal his bully's most prized abilities. At NRC, Azul managed to be an excellent student while also running the monster lounge, handling advertising, customer disputes, suppliers relations, his wish granting business, and board game club activities. He has real world experience that Riddle completely lacks. Despite their conflicts, Riddle and Azul actually complement each other perfectly. Riddle is straightforward and rushes headfirst into conflicts. Azul is cautious and business minded. Riddle excels at powerful, explosive magic, but burns out quickly. Azul specializes in precision spells and know how to ration his power for endurance. Riddle stands in the front as a heavy hitter. Azul provides support from the back, stepping in when allies go too far. They make up for each other's deficits. As they transfer sticks and go deeper, they continue arguing, but they also save each other using their specialties. Riddle handle combat, while Azul handle negotiations and strategy. They cover each other's weaknesses, and after they finally resolve the misunderstanding, their teamwork managed to fit in like a puzzle piece. Then comes the moment they defeat the Titan together with a thunderbolt lance. In the afterglow of victory, they cheer and high five, a gesture that's particularly significant for both of them. Riddle never got to live a proper childhood, never got to enjoy simple, casual, friendly gestures like this because he had no friends to share them with. Azul keep people at a distance to maintain professionalism and protect his carefully constructed image. A hi-fi is extremely colloquial. It's mutual celebration, acknowledgement of the other party. It's being vulnerable with another person, sharing the high of victory with them. They're just two young boys. Riddle is experiencing that piece of childhood that was lost to him. Azul is exposing a vulnerable side he usually hides. Their pride and pettiness are temporarily gone. In that moment, they finally see each other as equals and appreciate one another's strength. And then they awkwardly clear their throats and regain their composure. Because, of course, they do. From that point forward, they speak normally and even relate to each other by discussing their dreams. Riddle confides that he began medical training very young, and while his parents expect him to go into medical medicine, he's now considering law, pursuing his own path rather than just following what's expected. Azul laments that he has a spoiled, non-productive childhood and started medical training late compared to Riddle, but Riddle reassures him that those experiences help cultivate his sharp mind and ambition. They are finally able to see eye to eye, respecting one another in their differences and similarities, strengths and weaknesses. This interaction shows Riddle growth beautifully. He's learning that success comes from different forms, that following rules perfectly isn't the only path to achievement, that people with different approaches and backgrounds can be just as worthy, just as capable, sometimes more so. Something important to understand about Riddle's ongoing struggle is his black and white thinking. He still sees things in absolutes, right and wrong, rule followers and rule breakers, success and failure. This is a direct result of his upbringing. His mother's worldview allows no room for nuance or gray areas. There was only the correct way, her way, and the incorrect way, everything else. Even as Riddle grows and learns, this mentality persists. He's slowly learning to see shades of gray, to understand that context matters, that flexibility can be a strength rather than a weakness. But it's a gradual process. You can't undo a lifetime of conditioning overnight. Riddle's story resonates with a lot of people because it touches on some really painful real issues. Abusive parents disguised as high standards. Riddle mother represent a specific type of abuser, one who genuinely believes they are acting in their child's best interest. This type of abuse is often minimized or excused because their parent means well or the child achieves external success. But success doesn't mean you weren't harmed. The pressure to be perfect. Many people, especially high achievers, relate to Riddle's fear of failure and need to follow rules perfectly. The anxiety that one mistake will destroy everything. The inability to relax or be imperfect. Victim to perpetrator cycle. Riddle shows how abuse victims can become abusers themselves if they don't address their trauma. He genuinely thought that he was helping his dorm members, just as his mother probably thought she was helping him. Breaking the cycle requires recognizing the harm and choosing to act differently. The sunk cost fallacy in trauma. It's hard to admit that your suffering was meaningless or unnecessary. We want our pain to have purpose. Riddle shows how that desire can trap us in unhealthy patterns because admitting the truth means accepting that we have suffered for nothing. Learning to live beyond trauma. Riddle's story also shows that healing is possible, but it's gradual and imperfect. You don't just get over childhood trauma after one breakdown. You learn, you stumble, you grow bit by bit with the support of the people who care about you. So, why did Riddle overblot? He overblotted because he spent his entire life building an identity on a lie. He convinced himself that his mother's abuse was actually love, that his suffering had meaning, that perfect rule following would bring him happiness and respect. When that lie was finally shattered, when he was forced to confront that his mother was wrong, that his sacrifices were unnecessary, that he wasted his childhood and became a tyrant to others, the psychological weight of that realization crushed him. His overblot wasn't about the rules themselves. It was about the devastating moment when he realized his entire worldview was built on his abuser's manipulation, and everything he believed about himself and his life was false. But Riddle's story doesn't end here. He learned to accept reality, no matter how painful. He learned to be imperfect and still worthy. He learned that he could make mistakes and grow from them rather than being destroyed by them. He's learning to distinguish between helpful structure and toxic control. He's learning that other people's approaches can be valid, even if they're different from his. He's learning that titles and rules don't define worth, characters, and growth do. He'll never get back what was taken from him. Those childhood years are gone forever. But he's finally free to choose who he wants to become. He's considering law school instead of just following his parents' plans for medical school. He's making friends. He's learning to smile and relax. And that's its own kind of victory. Not defeating his mother or completely overcoming his trauma, but learning to live with it, grow beyond it, and build something better for himself. What do you think? Have you noticed other aspects of Riddle character that shows his struggle with control and perfectionism? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and remember, You don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love. Like and subscribe for more Twisted Wonderland character analysis.